You're muted, Shweta. You're muted.
Okay. I was like, whoever is present here, let's start with the introduction so that we know each other. So I will start with mine. Hello, everyone. I'm Shweta Garg and I'm president of AICI India Delhi chapter. And, I am really glad to see you all here on the forum. Thank you. Jheel, you would like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Jheel Shukla. I'm an image consultant from Vadodara batch. So yeah, that's all about me.
Great to have you.
Same here.
Any is there, Rebecca, Mansi? Hello, Jenny. Hi, Disha.
Hi, Shweta. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine too. Really excited for today's session.
Me too.
Me too.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening, Jenny. You were saying something.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I said hello, everyone.
Hello.
Sorry, I can't be on camera, but I'm here.
No problem. We can see your beautiful picture.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to have you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Joanne. I'm hailing from Trinidad and Tobago.
Hello.
Hi, Joanne. So nice to have
Excited
you.
to be here. Yes. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Pleasure to have you, John.
I'm sorry I can't be on camera, but I had surgery 2 days ago, so I'm in a face-down position until my eye heals.
The fact that you're
can't be
still
on
attending
camera.
the session.
Yeah, I don't want to miss it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Take care.
Right.
Hi, Ritu. Hi, Jigna.
Hi, Diya. Nice to be here again. Attending a
So
session by
nice. So
you.
nice to see you guys here. My God. I was just telling Jheel, I haven't seen her after such a long time. The pandemic is just, everybody's just, and it rains so heavily
just
today.
like Joanne, I am also pretty much in a quarantine right now. I'm having some symptoms, so I'm going to be off camera.
That's okay. The fact that you're here means a lot. Hi, Rashmita.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, Diya.
Hi, Rebecca.
Good morning, ladies. It's Rebecca, and I'm in the States.
Wow. So nice to have you. Thank you for joining in.
Oh, thank you. No, this is wonderful.
This is what you came for. Lightning strikes every time she moves, and everybody's watching her, but she's looking at you.
We will wait for another 2-3 minutes and then we will start. It's 7:03. Another 2-3 minutes and then we will start.
Give me a heads up. I'll wait for a heads up from you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I would request everyone, whoever can switch on their cameras, please do. It's always good to see each other and know that we will connect better, if possible, obviously. Hello, Zora.
Hi, Zora. So nice to see you. You're not audible. Oh, where'd she go?
I think the network.
Yeah. So, you know, I've kept my phone on full charge, my fingers crossed, because it's rained so heavily in Baroda. And I was like in the morning that it had to rain today only, you know. I just hope that the Wi-Fi supports me through the hour. And
Well, because till now it was fine.
yeah.
I think, Diya, we can start now because it's already 7:05 and then people will be joining in between, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I will start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome all to AICI India Delhi chapter. So welcome to the session 2 of our educational series 1.0 of AICI India Delhi chapter. And for the people who are new to AICI India Forum, I would like to give you a little about AICI, that AICI is the worldwide leading association of image consultants. And we, being the Indian chapter, we keep on organizing various events on different topics, you know, reaching out more people and try to add value to them. And me being a president of AICI India chapter and on behalf of my board, I would like to thank you all for your time and for your presence here today. I know, you know, everybody has their own busy schedules and you're here giving your time. Thank you so much. I have from my board, Zora. Zora, I would like to say hello to everyone.
Hi, hello everyone. Good evening.
Zora is our VP events. So yes, and I think other board members, they had some pre-scheduled things, so they couldn't come. Thank you. And today we have with us Miss Diya Khurana. Miss Diya, she will be talking about factors influencing learning in individual client consultation. And I would like to give a little brief introduction about Diya. She's a certified image, etiquette, and wardrobe consultant and has been working for a decade now as a corporate trainer and an individual image coach. In her career of 10 years, she has trained professionals across the country for the top multinationals, educational institutions, and corporate clients. She has also worked in a hospitality industry for 5 years. She has worked with more than 2,000 adults for dining etiquette training and over 3,500 kids for her signature workshop, Kiddie Etiquette. Her knowledge and experience in the industry is exemplary. We are honored to have you, Diya. I will not take much time. We have limited time. So over to you, Diya. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shweta. Thank you to the board. Thank you to AICI for giving me this opportunity. I cannot tell you, express to you in words how happy and honored I feel to be able to do this session at this platform. So it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Before I start, I would just like to give a brief introduction as to how this session came along, you know, and so I started my journey in 2011, and 3 years after being certified, I resisted doing individual consultations because I came from a corporate space, and that was my happy place. And I started working as a corporate trainer as soon as I got certified. And it was almost after 3 years of working as a trainer that an opportunity of an individual consultation came along, which was so tempting that I thought this would be foolish to refuse. And this was a CEO. He was a zonal head of a very big company, and their head office is in Baroda. And I did that consultation, and this is 8 years back. And it went well as a first consultation. I was very happy. I did my best to the utmost sincerity that I could do the job, and I did that. And 4 months down the line, I meet him, the client that I'm speaking about, at a mall with a group of people, dressed in a manner which was not in lines with what I had recommended to him. And as soon as he was with a group of other leaders, and it was great. I met him, and we exchanged pleasantries. And while he was introducing me to other people, in my head, what I'm thinking as a consultant who's worked with this client is that, why are you wearing these shoes, or these socks? This is not what we had discussed during our consultations. In my head, what's going on is that when there was this long consultation that has happened with this client, why is it that the recommendations have not been followed? And why isn't the kind of change that I would like to see in my client, why can I not see it? And that thing just kept, it kept eating me. And I had met him 4 months post the consultation. It wasn't very long that he would have forgotten everything. So I took an appointment, and I went to his office, and we met, and then we briefly spoke about the recommendations, if there was any struggle that he was facing, how are things going along, because he was struggling with his image issues for that position. And that's when he told me that, oh, really? Did we discuss that? Okay, I don't remember that. And that was like, like a moment for me that, all right, I've been through this entire consultation with this person. There was so much that I discussed, and why doesn't he remember, or why cannot he recall? And that's when I started paying attention to what is it that I can do for a client to enable, encourage better comprehension, better retention. And that's when I started making very small changes in the way I did my consultation with clients. And I realized that over a period of time, the change that I see in people I work with today, vis-a-vis the ones that I had worked with initially, that gap is very big. So that's when I started to think back, what are those changes that really helped me get this transition, increase the retention and comprehension of a client. And from there, all of this started. So I started thinking back about what are these things that I can do so that I make sure that when something is discussed with a client, it stays with him or her. So what I will be discussing today are factors that I have learned from my work experience over these 6 to 7 years that I have worked with clients that influence the learning in individual client consultations. The entire session is, so the entire session is going to talk about what are the small things that I have done. It is all views that I express or I will be sharing with you come from my own experience, things that I did that I felt worked for me. I put them all together, and I'm going to be sharing those with you today. So this is what I have identified as 8 factors that directly influence the learning of a client in individual consultations, in one-on-one consultations. And though when I created the presentation, it was kept with my profession in mind for image consultants. But now that I think back and I go through these factors, I realize more and more that any consultant, in fact, even if a soft skills trainer, because there were one-on-one consultations that I did for public speaking, I did for communication for our clients, and these factors helped me there as well. So these are some of the few factors that I realize have worked for me. Number one is walk the talk. So it's something that's, I don't need to explain it. So if there is something that I'm sharing with my client that this will work for you, he or she should be able to see it in me first. So I should be walking the talk. Mastery before momentum, getting my technical knowledge in place before I start working, before I take the plunge as a consultant. The intelligence of the client and the common sense of the consultant. Now, these are three factors that I'm not going to be discussing today because they are very self-explanatory. A client with a high IQ, somebody who is naturally intelligent, is obviously going to understand and retain discussions, recommendations far more than otherwise. And of course, the common sense of the consultant. I have over the years come to trust my common sense more than anything when I'm working with my clients. So these are three factors which I feel are very obvious, and hence I will not be discussing them today. But the other five, the fourth one being defining session goals, beginning with the end spelled out. And I will be talking about the last five in detail. Sorry. The type of learner that we are dealing with. So when we are groomed as trainers, we are constantly told that you have to keep in mind that in your audience, as an audience, your learners can be visual, can be auditory, can be kinesthetic. And you have to keep the learning style of all three types of learners when you're conducting a training session. But for me, when it came to one-on-one consultations, this was one thing that I overlooked. And then when I started taking this into consideration, it made a big difference to how clients received the information that I shared with them. Number 6 is the learning space, or the place where the consultation happened, actually the physical space. So the room you're sitting in, the kind of vibe that room is giving, the environment, the comfort, physical as well as psychological. That entire environment enhanced the receptivity, the learning of a client to a great deal. And I will share with you today what has worked for me. Number 7, language or verbal content. Now, my English, spoken English, has been decently good. I come from a public school and has been decently good since forever. But it was the changes that I made in how I spoke with the clients that I could observe an instant difference. This was one of those factors that instantly showed me a change in the way people I worked with received information I shared with them. And number 8, of course, was the tools that I use during consultations. And now I pay a lot of importance. I spend a lot of time, I invest a lot of time in creating tools for myself when I'm dealing with different kind of people, especially when we are working one-on-one. Because when you're working in a group, the group dynamic also enhances the learning. You know, there are 6 people sitting on a table and there is so much information being shared within each other, and that aids learning. But when you're sitting one-on-one, it's just 2 people together. And after some time, if that communication flow is not the way the receiver intends it to be, then it can become either very boring, very overwhelming, all of those things. So the tools that I use for my consultations, so that I feel was a big factor that influenced how my clients received information that I shared. Now, like I said, 3 obvious factors: walking the talk, mastery before momentum, the intelligence of the client, and the common sense of the consultant. These are 3 factors that greatly influence how people receive information. And I say this also from being at the receiving end. So I have also met people, I have worked with consultants, I have worked with counselors, and I realized that these 3 factors directly influenced how I received when I was in the client's position. But what we are going to be talking about today are these 5 factors that influence how a client learns, or factors that influence the comprehension of a client. So the first one, starting with the first one, defining session goals, beginning with the end spelled out. This has been one of the most productive habits that I have developed while working with people. Now, what do I mean by defining session goals? As a trainer, when we conduct a session and when we are working with people, there is certain kind of outcome that we wish to see post the training session. So, for example, if I'm teaching how to shake hands, in my head, the learning outcome is that post the session, the client, number one, should be able to confidently shake hands. Number two, should be able to, in his head, decide when to offer a hand to shake and when not to offer a hand to shake. Learning outcomes that we want to achieve from our training. I started writing learning outcomes for every session that I did with people. So prior to the session, I write down, and till date, this has been the one habit that has become like the rule for me. I never do any individual or training session without writing learning outcomes, without putting that learning outcomes in front of me while I'm creating the entire session and the session flow, so that I know that every step that I take in the training is directed or aimed at achieving that learning outcome. So prior to the session, write these down, read them out and discuss them with the client. What I'm saying is that when I sit down for a consultation, for a session, whether it is a styling session, whether it is a session where we are discussing the body shape of the client and how they should dress as per their body shape, or whether we are discussing what colors are going to work for this person, I sit down and say, you know what, today these are the few things that we are going to do. So in the 2.5 to 3 hour session, and for me, 3 to 3.5 hours, apart from a wardrobe evaluation, is the maximum that I sit down with a person. I have realized that post that, somehow that ability to concentrate and focus kind of gets lost or diluted. So in a 2.5, 3 hour session, I sit down and write down the goals, and I start my session by discussing these outcomes with the client. Try not to achieve more than 4. For a 2.5 hour to 3 hour session, I stick to the rule of 3. Because I have realized that that directly affects the retention of what is being discussed. In fact, through the session, I keep discussing that. So for example, we are discussing body shape. So I start the session by saying that today I'm going to, number one, evaluate your body shape. The benefit of evaluating body shape is XYZ. Then we will try and identify the garments that work for your body shape so that it looks very balanced and more like an ideal, most aesthetic, things like that. I put these down on paper, and I have like a stand on which this paper is stuck, and it stays there in front of both of us, the client and me, as a reminder that this is what we have set to achieve for today's session. The benefit, like I said, I stick to the rule of 3 learning outcomes per session. The benefits of starting a session when you define your goals in the very beginning, the learning outcomes that you wish to achieve with this person. Number one is that at the end of the session, you know whether the task you set out to achieve has been accomplished or not. Many times, if the client and you strike a rapport, you get chatting, the discussion goes in another direction, then getting the client back to the topic that's being discussed or to the agenda that is there for the session becomes difficult. So when you have this outcome kept in front of you, and right next to the clock is ticking, the client is aware that these outcomes need to be met. Number two, the clock is ticking for both. So focusing on achieving the goal for both the parties exists. As a consultant, I know that by the end of today's session, this is something that I have to achieve. And the client is also aware that in today's session, these are the things. It also kind of makes me accountable. Now, this works for me. It may or may not work for other people. But it has been such a productive habit that I have developed, that I have stuck to this for every training session that I do, whether I'm facilitating a session with a client one-on-one, or whether I'm doing a workshop, group workshop with 3 to 4 people or with 40 people. My learning outcomes are spelled out. I share them in the beginning of the session, and then I put them somewhere in the room where everybody can see, so that I am now accountable for achieving these outcomes for my audience or for the person that I'm sitting with. Once written, read and discussed, the retention for all types of learners I have experienced is generally much more. So they start, even if I'm remember that day when we were discussing body shape, because the outcome have been discussed, somehow the connection of that particular session with the outcome is there and they retain more. Now I'm just giving a small sample of what I'm talking about. Let's say for a session, I'm discussing appropriate attire. So most professional clients who come to me for the fact that while in their professional journey, in their career, they've kind of hit a glass ceiling and they need to change the way they present themselves. So those type of clients, I normally start by talking about how do you identify what is appropriate attire. When you're going for a board meeting, when you're going for a client meeting, when you're going for a public speech, when you're giving a presentation, how does one identify what attire is appropriate? And then how do you choose from your wardrobe? So let's say for a 3-hour session where I'm discussing appropriate attire with a client, these are a few learning outcomes that I write down and I discuss with them. So I start by saying that today we are going to identify your lifestyle from a sartorial perspective. What you wear, where you wear, and why you wear it. So I'm going to evaluate. I'm going to do something like a lifestyle evaluation where I'm going to be looking at currently what are you wearing? What is it that you wear right now? Number 2, I will identify how you wish to project yourself in these occasions. So when you're standing as a leader and giving a presentation, what do you want the audience to think about you? When you're going in a client meeting, what message do you want to communicate to the client in the client meeting? That's the second thing. Number 3 is we are going to identify what is appropriate attire for all these occasions in your life, weekly, monthly, and annually. So if there is an AGM, an annual general meeting that he's attending, what is it that he's wearing currently? How does he wish to project himself? And what is the appropriate attire for that occasion? And then I give them a disclaimer that, you know what, today we will not be discussing fashion styles. We will not be discussing body shape. We will not be discussing color preferences or color choices. Once I've discussed these 3 outcomes and the disclaimer, I realized that when I would start a session on appropriate attire and say that, you know what, these kind of jackets or these kind of shirts or these kind of tunics will work very well for you for these occasions. So then she would say, but I don't like this color, but I don't like that style, but this is not the kind of scarf that I would wear. So I spell out the outcomes and then I say that we shall be discussing your body shape, but not today. We will be discussing a thorough color evaluation, but we will not be doing that today. And hence the interruptions that happen and the time those interruptions consume kind of get managed. So starting with the end spelled out, discussing the learning outcomes with the client just before as you begin the session has proved to be an extremely productive habit. And that has worked very well for me so far. Number 2, the number 2 factor that I think I realized much later. So almost 5 to 6 years in my career, one day when I was doing a training session, we started talking about, there was this one kid who stood up and said, you know what, I'm the kind of a person, I don't like to read the manual. When I receive an appliance, I like to take out that box. And we all have such people in our families who will not read the manual of the appliance, but they would like to, open it, do things to it and work their way out and understand how this thing functions. That was that moment when I realized that when I'm paying attention to what pedagogy I should use in my training sessions so that I'm able to cover and so that I'm able to reach out to all kind of learners in my audience, I should be paying attention to the same thing when I'm working with people one-on-one. And that's when I did something which I feel is amazing. And if you wish, you could use it for your clients as well. Now, we all know that there are 3 types of learners. There are auditory learners, there are visual learners, and then there are kinesthetic or tactile learners. Once you identify what kind of learner you're working with, you cannot imagine how much fun it is to do the session with this person. So you could find out by directly asking the client. In my opinion, that has not worked very well for me. A lot of people didn't know what kind of learners they were. Or B, you could use a fun quiz for the same. So if you Google, I'm going to show you a sample of the one that I use, but if you Google, there are a lot of quizzes out there that will enable you to find out what kind of a learner you're dealing with. So post the chemistry meeting, when I send them a message that let's meet at this time tomorrow or at this date, this venue, I send them a link for that quiz. And I tell them I kindly request you to go on this link, just answer 20 questions on the quiz and send me a screenshot of the result. So what I'm sharing with you is just a sample. So educationplanner.org is a fabulous website. You could also use this, but there are many, I'm telling you, there are so many out there. You could send this link to your client. This is a sample of my learning styles. So I am auditory 30%, visual 35%, and tactile 35%. Now this would be very cool if I have it in a client, because there is this variety of learning styles, and there are so many tools that you could use with this client, so many ways that you could work with this client. But there will be clients which will be 60 to 70% auditory, very little of visual and tactile. Then there'll be ones who will be dominantly visual, 69 to 70% visual as in their learning style. What this tiny little information for your client can do is unbelievable. So once you find out what kind of a learner you're dealing with, the next day, you can prep for the session beforehand. You can be better prepared using better learning aids for that particular style of learning. And this tiny information will drastically change the mode of delivery, at least for me, to share information from people with varied backgrounds. Now, once I know that this person is a visual learner, if I do too much talk with this person, the retention or the comprehension of the client is going to be low. And I'm not telling you this because I've read it in some book. Trust me, I've tried this, and this is something that I do with all my clients for the past 4 years diligently. I send them the link, they go through the quiz, they send me a screenshot of what kind of learner they are, learning style they have, and then I work with them. Keep a learner you're working with. These kind of people, I have realized, love discussions. They enjoy discussions, and their learning is usually good if you keep reiterating the key strategies. Twice more, 10 times. You know, like how you have a rhyme that you keep saying constantly. Whatever you repeat, you emphasize. Whatever you repeat, you emphasize. So if I'm trying to tell her that the color of your eyes is green, if you repeat the green in your clothes, you're going to emphasize the color of your eyes. I want her to remember that. If this is an auditory learner I'm working with, I reiterate the point again and again like a rhyme in the session. These are also things that I note down. So from my learning outcome, what are the key learning outcomes that I want this client to have before the session ends? Those are the points that I keep reiterating. Trust me, from my experience, auditory learners are our best friends. It's great to work with auditory learners. You can sit and have discussions with them, relax back, and the discussions lead to so much learning from the auditory learners. And however, they are very rarely found. So I have worked with a very small percentage of learners where the learning style was auditory. Visual learners, if these are the people we talk too much with, they tend to retain less. Visual learners, as the name suggests, learn by seeing. These are guys who need pictures, lots of pictures, presentation styles, strategies that we are discussing, but these strategies should be written down. So when I'm dealing with a visual learner and a very dominantly visual learner, if somebody's learning style comes 70% above any particular style, then you have to pay more attention when you're working with them to that particular learning style. So if your learner is 70% visual, then make sure that even the strategies that you're discussing on a sheet of paper like this should be highlighted. You'll realize that they tend to save information like pictures. They are like cameras. Everything gets stored like images. So even if you want them to remember a strategy, highlight it or write it on a separate piece of paper and put it in front of them. These will also be the guys who will carry diaries with them. So once you identify the learning style, it's amazing to observe their behavior and you'll see how their learning style syncs with the body language and the behavior of this person you're working with. These are the ones who will carry diaries. These are the ones who will write notes. Because when you write it, you also see it and you tend to retain more. And then, of course, come our kinesthetic or tactile learners. These folks learn by doing. They need to use their hands, legs, face, any part of the body that they can move. They find extremely difficult to sit. And this is my son. My daughter is an auditory learner. My son is a kinesthetic learner. If I want him to learn something, I have to make an activity out of it. And when I'm talking to my daughter, we sit down at night when we are both are alone, and then we start discussing. If there's a speech that she has to do or a presentation, we discuss, and she remembers what we've discussed. But when it is my kid, when it is my son, I sit down and show him videos. I will give him like a sort activity. I will give him, okay, put this from your highest preference to your lowest preference. And it works exactly the same way with your client. Activities, activities, and more activities. The key is to keep them involved physically somehow. Now, here are some of my observations that I have seen in the learners or the clients that I have worked with. I'm simply sharing my observations here. Number one, so far amongst the number of people that I have worked with, 50 clients that I have worked with one-on-one individually, only 5% were auditory learners. There were very few learners who were dominantly auditory learners. They were all men. I have not so far had one woman auditory learner. Most women, the ones that I have worked with, have been dominantly visual, or like a balanced mix of all three. Men aged 40 years and above, the younger the person you're dealing with, the more kinesthetic and visual the learning style. Also, there have been people, for example, when I talk of myself, 10 years back when I did the same quiz, I was dominantly visual. Today, my auditory learning has enhanced. So with age, priorities change and your learning style also undergoes a change. So the younger the person you're dealing with, the less auditory learning style you will find. Auditory learners are a dream. I have to tell you that. Maybe I love discussions. I love having chats and talks with people. Auditory learners love to talk over the phone. These are the people who will call you back. These are the people who will tell you that, okay, this is something that we discussed, but I did not understand this. Can you tell me? And if I'll tell them, you know what, the recommendation sheet or the file that I have given you, I have written in detail. She said, yeah, but can you quickly tell me again? So these are the people who learn by listening. So encourage them at your own risk. I learned it the hard way. Initially, when I started working with people, I had people calling me at odd hours. And in my excitement and in when you're young as a professional, I realized that after some time I had to start drawing a line. So encourage these learners at your own risk. Visual learners were the maximum. 69% of the people that I have worked with were visual learners, and they tend to get distracted by noise very easily. So I'm sorry, my phone is on. My daughter's unwell, so I'm expecting a call. I'll just keep it on for another minute and then. They notice the tiniest details. And the funny bit is that a lot of clients, a lot of people will tell you, you know what, this spelling is wrong or this is off. I've always noticed that it is the visual learners who tend to observe these things more easily and more quickly. So once you know that this is the learner that you're dealing with, it becomes easier. And once the consultation starts, these are the people who will flood your WhatsApp or who will flood your email with pictures and related questions with pictures. Kinesthetic are the most challenging because you have to involve them physically. There has to be a constant involvement. These people need to use their hands. They will not be able to sit. So 26% in my case, they feel the need to move constantly, so much so that now I don't even need a quiz. So when I have a chemistry meeting, I'm observing the body language of the person that I'm working, talking to in the chemistry meeting. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is a kinesthetic learner that I'm dealing with. These are the ones who keep moving in the chair. They'll keep moving their arm from one place to another. And that also means that they'll take multiple, these are the ones I notice also take multiple visits to the loo. So during a discussion, these are the ones they feel the need to get up and move around. So when you're aware what learner you're dealing with, it becomes relatively easy to work with that person. Another factor that I have observed is the learning space, that you create. Now, when I started out initially, I didn't have a space of my own. So these were a few places that I used for client consultations for myself. I would invite them to a cafe, which would be quiet at a time where there wouldn't be too many people. Restaurants, again, the residence of the client or my own residence. I would call them home. We would sit together and I would work with them there. But I realized that these spaces, the disturbance that was there, Baroda, where I come from, is a relatively smaller town in India. And we would end up going to a cafe where somebody or the other would walk in who would know either me or the client, would come and say hi, and the chat would disturb the consultation. In a restaurant, the whole environment, the smell of the food, that would get in the way of the discussion that we are having. And these spaces did not work well with me. And that's when I started hiring corporate spaces. So if typically this space is next to a mall. Now, when I say a mall, I'm talking about image coaches, image consultants, fashion stylists, people who are working with clothes. And I'll tell you why this worked very well for me, or my own space. So I use a space now in my husband's office, which has been entirely done up for my work. I change what's on the walls for every consultation. And I'll tell you what I do and how it has worked for me. And fortunately for me, by chance, we tend to share a common wall with a very big mall in Baroda. Now, why I write that this works very well if you are in a space, a hired corporate space that is next to a mall. Why I say that is because when you are doing a consultation about clothes, for example, appropriate attire, I do that for most of my sessions. If it is a 3-hour session, I finish around 2 hours, 15 minutes, 2 hours, 20 minutes, and the rest 40 minutes, we just walk down. So we walk down and through the gate, cross the wall and get into the mall. And then we enter stores. And whatever has been discussed on paper through pictures or the garments that I have as demo pieces to show to the client, in the mall, you have so many brands and you have so many styles. We walk into those kind of brands that I feel will work for the client, and we start discussing whatever has been discussed in the office. It has worked very well for me. Instantly, there are things that they start pointing out. So you know what, I like this, I would like to try it. And in their head, There are so many ideas coming up now because whatever they have discussed is now being seen right in front. This, of course, is if you can do it, but this has been something that has worked very well for me. So now, like a pattern, I do a 2-hour or 3-hour sit down session in a room with my demo pieces, pictures, presentation slides. Then the last 45 minutes, we just shut down everything. We walk down, go into the mall and walk into stores and start discussing, looking at garments, the same discussion that's carried out in the mall. And it's amazing. It's fun, it's amazing, and the learning is so good. Now, some other ways of creating this environment in your own office. These have worked very well for me. Number one, what you can do on the wall. So there's this big soft board in my office and a big whiteboard, a magnetic whiteboard. This gives you the flexibility of putting whatever you want to put on it. So some things that work very well with people. For example, reality checks. Now, when you're working with someone from the management background, or somebody who is not very creatively inclined, or somebody who doesn't believe in the power of clothes. For example, when I'm working with managers who've been sent to me by their leadership teams, they have not voluntarily come to me. Now, these are people who very often come with this belief that are you trying to tell me that clothes is everything? That if I change my clothes, my life is going to change. They come with that, with their attitude. And unless you don't deal with that attitude, it's like a resistance. They resist accepting anything unless you don't break that barrier. So I put reality checks on the walls. An example of the reality check, if I were to give you, is that I put it like a big quote on one of the soft boards that clothing can aid you in the pursuit of your goals. Okay. It is very essential in achieving success, achieving your goals. However, clothing can never replace essential knowledge and skills required to succeed in life. So as image consultants, we are not telling you that knowledge and soft skills are not required. What we are telling you is that your clothes should work as hard as you do. This is something I write and put it up on the soft board. When they come, if it's in big capital letters, this is something they read. And that attitude of defensive attitude of the fact that, our clothes, everything, is that what you're trying to say? That is less. When they're less defensive and their resistance is less, they tend to accept more. So quotes like this, disclaimers like that, pictures that I put up on the walls, key learning, powerful and motivational key learnings that you want to achieve for that particular session can be printed out, can be written, painted, and put up on the wall. And then I also have a small wall of fame. And this is nothing but a board where whoever has worked with me, I give them post-its, they write their feedback that this is what I learned from the session, or how much did they like that session. And then I put up those post-its on the wall of fame. What that does indirectly, or I would say very subtly, is kind of build credibility with the person you're working with. This client who's sitting across the table can kind of just see, without you telling, that you've done this in the past, that you know what you're doing, that they're in the safe hands of a professional who is doing this for a living, and there have been other people who have benefited from it. Very indirectly, it kind of light is extremely important. If you can manage to have a space where you have a lot of natural light flushing in, nothing works like natural light. But if you cannot, the space should be well lit. Refreshments, you'll be surprised if somebody is there with you for 4 hours and you're serving a refreshment. It plays an important role. I have also received very great feedback for good, yummy refreshments that I have served. The quality of stationery. I know some of you may think that this doesn't matter, but it does. There are people who will pick up the highlighter pen that I let them take with them and say that, wow, this is a great pen. And then they use it more. So I don't know, these are maybe cheap thrills kind of a thing, something that just gives a little joy, but it helps create the whole environment. And music, when Shweta, we were us, when all of us had just joined, she had put on music. Nothing can create tempo and an environment like music. So based on whatever's being discussed, if there's a light music playing in the background before the client walks in, then you stop it. Then while refreshments are being had, music can be put on again. It creates a great vibe. Everybody always comes and tells me that, you know what, I just love the music. Another factor that I feel has greatly enhanced, or in fact, if you ask me, this is what changed the game for me. So the language or the verbal content. And I love this quote from Albus Dumbledore from Harry Potter, that words are, in my not so humble opinion, our most inexhaustible source of magic, capable of both inflicting injury and remedying it. So nothing, this quote just sums up everything in the best way. It is unbelievable. And I'm telling you, it has been the game changer for me. How this small change impacted the response I received from people that I worked with and the comprehension of the client. So what you speak, number one, when we speak of language, the words that we choose to use. And number two is the professional vocabulary or the professional lingo. So every profession has their own vocabulary. The more we use it, the more it helps. And I'll tell you what I mean when I say that. Now, number one, what we speak or the words that we choose to use. Has any one of you read the book, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz? So in his book, I love that book. In his book, David Schwartz says that when you speak or write, you are in a sense a projector. You're showing movies in the minds of the people either listening to you or reading your text, what you've written. And the pictures you create determine how you and others react. So hence it makes great sense to rephrase what we recommend so that the visual image that is formed in the mind of the person, of our client, is positive, appealing, and hence in effect more acceptable. I'll give you a small example. If I am talking to a client and I want him to buy a very expensive suit, something that costs 25,000 rupees in Indian currency. And I know that this amount of money is some amount for the client who's making the expenditure, but it's going to benefit him a great deal. Instead of saying that I highly recommend that you buy this suit, that you purchase this suit, or this is a cost that I feel you must incur. If I phrase it in a manner that, you know what, this is an investment I highly recommend you make. Now what it does is, when I say you purchase, buy, or an expense that you must make, the movie playing in the client's head is money going out from his pocket. That is something that nobody likes. But the minute you rephrase it and you say that you must invest in this suit, investment is something that you're putting in today and that will give you returns tomorrow. These have been few words: confidence, empower, enhance, improve, invest, that I very regularly use. And I have seen a marked difference in how people respond to the sound of these words. So the words that we choose to use play a very, very important role. I'll give you another example. Let's say we are working with a bottom heavy figure. This is for image consultants. Somebody who's a triangular figure is bottom heavy. Instead of in the recommendations telling her that, you know what, you should not wear jeggings. You cannot wear jeggings. You should avoid wearing jeggings. If we say that, you know what, for your figure type, you must invest in styles that are wider, styles that are flared at the bottom. Now, when I say you should not, you can't, in her head, the movie that's playing is options for her being cut out. You know, in her head, she's thinking, oh my God, I can't wear this. Vis-a-vis when I tell her that, you know what, you should wear, or you must invest in wide-legged, flared bottoms. Now in her head, she's imagining options that are getting added to her wardrobe. The acceptability of the recommendation and the comprehension of the recommendation becomes much, much higher. It has honestly been the biggest factor, and it took me some time because I was used to speaking in a certain way all my life. Now, before every word comes out of my mouth, I think about what is going to be the implied meaning, the denotative meaning, the suggestive meaning of the word. Is it going to play a happy, joyful scene in the listener's mind, or is it going to be something that will not be appreciated? And then I change what I say before I say it. The second point in verbal content is the professional vocabulary. Every profession has a set of words, you know, that we use specifically for that. When we tend to use that, it establishes credibility. In other words, in order to be perceived intelligent, we must sound intelligent by using the words that are, you know, that are the lingo that belongs to our profession. Now, what I mean by this is that this is something that Judith Rasband, she's my mentor, says very often, that let's learn to cover, camouflage, or counter what you can enhance in your figure and create the illusion of your ideal face and figure. So instead of saying stuff like, you know what, this will match with your skin, or this will cut the roundness of your face, this will highlight your legs. If we use language like, this color will be more in harmony with your skin tone. This garment style is going to work, you know, is going to enhance your body shape, or is going to enhance your beautiful eyes. The way you choose to word it, because we don't know that when we are working with people, that particular variation of a prominent belly, of you know, less hair, of any blemishes on the skin, may have had a lot of past behind it, insecurities associated with it. When you don't word it right, I'll give you a very small example very quickly. There is this salon right next to my house where I take my son for a haircut very often. One of these days, there was a man sitting there. It's a unisex salon. And there was a man sitting there getting a haircut done. And my son was sitting right in front getting his haircut done. And the guy was sitting there for a haircut and was going to dye his hair later, color his hair. So the guy cutting his hair, now because they're next door, I know the entire team very well. My son, I take my son every there. I know this guy is very good, very efficient. His intention is right. While giving the haircut, he told that man, almost in his mid-30s, that he said that, you know what, I want this mohawk style where my hair stands straight. The client who was sitting. And the hairdresser who was cutting his hair, he said, you know what, this is going to make this bald patch more prominent. He said it in Hindi. So for the sake of people who don't understand Hindi, in as many words, he said that this bald patch is going to become more prominent. Suddenly that guy looked up, and for some reason I cursed myself. I looked, you know, the way he said it was so brash that I looked at him, and in the mirror, our eyes met. I'm sure that man was very embarrassed. I was far, far more embarrassed than that guy. And post that point, he became so upset. The client became so upset that throughout the coloring process, while I paid for my son and I left, he was so ticked off. He was snapping at that hairdresser throughout the time while he was there. So once this guy left, I went back and I told them that if somebody is having an issue and they are struggling with it, if the words that come out of your mouth hurt them, then your advice, they shut their ears. What they hear is, you know, nothing goes in from here then. So once you say something that by mistake hurts the feelings of a person, post that point, even in our consultations, all he or she is thinking about, how does she give a defensive answer, or how does, constantly thinks about that insecurity, and whatever recommendations or whatever things you discuss post that point just get kind of lost. Some tips that I have benefited from when it comes to verbally engaging with people is showing conversation generosity. Can anybody from the group tell me what do we mean by conversation generosity? Anyone? So conversation generosity is just being quiet and listening to the person talk, not trying and controlling the conversation in any way. In a way, also providing a space where people can open up and say whatever they want to say without any reactions from the body language or any responses from, oh, okay, this happened, just sitting there and listening. That's something that has helped me a lot. I have very consciously, and it has taken a lot of time and effort to reduce the use of words like don't, can't, you shouldn't, bearing the cost, or incur this expense. I've restricted the use of these words, and that has helped me a great deal. Consciously make an effort to use, like I said, positive words like invest, confident, and empower, enhance, appropriate, rather than saying that this will be better, this will be more appropriate. That has changed, and that has helped me a lot. And learning from the pros. So this is something I do very often. Speakers that I look up to, consultants, senior consultants that I look up to, I listen to how they speak, the choice of words they use. Were they to explain a concept or something to somebody, what would be the ideal choice of words that they would use? And then try to use those words very consciously. For the first 3 years, you won't believe, I used to write a script that if I'm going to be talking about what colors will work for you, how am I going to word it? When I realized that I need to change the way I speak, I started writing a script. And trust me, over a period of time, that has kind of become, it now happens at a subconscious level. I automatically use a certain words. I automatically have now completely stopped using words that kind of, that are restrictive. Don't, can't, shouldn't, those kind of words. So I used to write a script, and that also helped a lot. An open mind with a positive attitude towards the speaker will always be ready for learning. So, in my observation, I have mentioned this already. If something we say hurts the feeling or upsets a client, that point forward, that client's mind, and sometimes you say something and just immediately regret saying it, you can see that the person in front has gone into a shell. Their mind is looking for a reason, for the comment that you have or I have made, or an excuse, or thinking about something defensive to say. And in that entire process of them thinking about that comment, the discussion on hand completely gets lost. So being as much cautious as one can while saying certain words, while being very conscious about the variations that you're speaking about, how you word them, makes a big difference. It has helped me a lot. And the last factor that I will discuss very quickly, the tools that I have used for clients. And this is directly related to the learning styles that we discussed. It works amazingly. So if you can identify the kind of learner that you're dealing with, it's going to work a great deal. So for example, if we are working with auditory listeners, reading along, having a printed page, but when you're giving them their recommendations and talking about discussing recommendations, read along the recommendation, because they are better off listening to it rather than reading at home. You can expect these people to go back home and never read a sheet of paper that you give them. Never read it. So reading along most of the things, it's a strategy that has worked. Reading out loud keywords, goals to achieve, strategies, increases their attention. Videos that have very powerful audio content, music behind, something inspirational, that works very well with auditory learners. Flashcards and pictures, but with constantly you talking in the background. So auditory learners tend to associate sound notes with whatever they see. So you show them denim styles that will work for you. You keep talking about it. So you see this, how it's fitted at the waist. This is going to work very well. You keep talking about it. Their retention, their comprehension is enhanced by listening and engaging them in discussions, of course. You'll be amazed at how quickly they will learn once you know that this is dominantly auditory learning. So doing a quiz, verbal quiz with them in the end to just kind of, wrap up the entire session works brilliantly well. Reiterating key concepts, that helps them. And auditory learners will never go back home and read what you have given them. So make sure that if there's something they're confused about, they're going to call you back. Be prepared for it. Then it comes to your visual learners. Tools that visual learners love is anything that they can see. So like we say, a picture speaks more than 1,000 words for everybody. But for these guys, pictures are what really do the speaking. So everything that you discuss must have either a garment or a picture or an image to just reiterate what you are talking about. A simple activity like highlighting text will also help them remember, understand much more than you just saying it. Charts. So authority charts. This is something that we use as image consultants. Any visual aid that you can put up on the wall, and then every time you discuss and you go back, like you see in that picture on the board, that really works very well for visual learners. Videos is something that works for all three, especially videos that have an audio associated with it. Auditory, visual, as well as kinesthetic. Videos hook everybody. So there are some dining etiquette sessions where I use my own video. I've recorded my own videos and I play my own video, to give myself a break, but still engage the person who is sitting with me when we are doing theory. So there's music and all of that. Videos, everybody gets engaged with videos. Good readers generally, visual learners are normally good readers. The articles and even extra information not discussed during the session, you can give them in their hand and tell them that, let's read it before the session we meet again. And then, of course, come our doers, the kinesthetic learners. Activities and activities. Cut up everything and make an activity. For example, what are your favorite and not so favorite colors? What are the denim styles that you love and don't love? Cut them out and tell them segregate them. Even in the process of segregation, they're going to learn better than if you just show them a sheet of paper and say, these are 10 styles. Tell me which ones you like or which ones will work for you and why, kind of a thing. Give the quiz documents to them and make them do it. So when we do personal style evaluation, there's a lot of data that we collect about the client. So all labeling activities, all personal style evaluation, all the graphs, plotting of graphs, all of that. The kinesthetic learners will love to sit and do it and give them colorful pens and they'll have a ball. Instead of showing pictures, if we cut them out and request the client to arrange in many ways, like I mentioned, they're going to enjoy that more and they're going to retain that more. So their understanding and learning gets enhanced. So to sum up very quickly, factors that I have realized that directly have influenced my clients' learning, that has enabled them to retain more, to understand better, to comprehend better. Client application is the best marketing tool for a consultant. So whatever I have taught, this is what I learned from my first client. When he didn't wear what I recommend, my God, I was heartbroken. But if he's going to go and tell somebody else, you know what, Diya is my consultant, that guy's going to look at him and think something about Diya. So client application is my best marketing tool. And client comprehension is the key in application. The better they comprehend, understand, retain, the more they apply. So motivating them to application is another topic, it's a topic for another day, how you motivate them to do that. But comprehension is key to application. Client comprehension can be enhanced and the tools used to accomplish may be the same. However, the need to be used differently for different people. So you can have just 10 tools. but it can be used differently, or it will need to be used differently for different people you're working with, based on where does he come from, what does he want from you. So you need to have that environment, often gauge what is it, where is the gap, how do you fill the gap, and what tools, how can I use this tool differently with this person. Client comprehension, I feel, like I said, this is my personal opinion, is primarily my responsibility, and then the client's. What he or she receives, comprehends, and then retains is primarily my responsibility, and then the client's responsibility. So I used to think communication was the key until I realized comprehension is. You can communicate all you want with somebody, but if they don't understand you, it's silent chaos. On that note, thank you very much, guys. If there are any questions that you want to ask, I would love to address them.
We can take up questions. If there are any questions, you can ask.
Are there any questions in the chat?
Tina wants to ask. Tina, she's put her hand up. Tina, you can go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, ladies. Wonderful session, Diya. Always a pleasure to attend one of yours.
Thank you.
If you could just quickly share a few pointers as to how to go about a group session. How do you gauge the learning, whether it is auditory, visual, kinesthetic, for a group session?
So, Tina, it's when you're dealing with a group, if it's a small group, like individual workshops that we do, I do them a lot of those because they tend to be a little cheaper for the clients and they tend to be more fun for me. So if it's a group of 4 and 6 people, then doing the quiz with all 4 and 6 is possible. When you're doing your private workshops where the group is small, you send the quiz to them, they share their responses with you. It's very easy to gauge and then plan the entire session like that. But when you're talking about a corporate activity, corporate training, or you're talking about an activity which involves 24 plus people, the best way to go, this is what I do, Tina, the best way to go forward is that the pedagogy should be such that you cater to all types of learners. You have enough auditory method of sharing your information, visual aids that you have, and as well as activities, so that none of the learners feel left behind or out of place or lost. So your PPT can play a very important role. If you're a non-PPT person, then you can have a document. You'll see a lot of speakers who will come and give you a document before they start off, and then they keep going back to the document. And then you could also have activities, the quiz activities, groups, you divide them into teams. What we do when we divide them into teams and give them activities to do is we are catering to the kinesthetic learners.
Shweta, she's
I hope I've answered your question, Tina.
Yes, you have, Diya. I understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other question?
okay. I think we have Shweta.
Yes, we don't have any questions in the chat. If there are any questions, you can please raise your hand. Diya is okay. I think we don't have Zora, so you can continue. Yeah.
So let me just tell you, I know Diya since quite some years now, and we were in a program together for RAM. And I remember when we started off the program, Diya always had so many questions to ask in every session. And I knew from that time that this girl is going to go far because she made it a point to understand everything so well. And as she said, she wrote down everything. She asked questions. Even in break, she would sit down and talk to, the speakers and the trainers. So they are absolutely wonderful session, I must say. It was very engaging, very inspiring, and very motivating and informative. And thank you so much for taking the session today. I'm sure everybody's really learned a lot, benefited a lot, and we'll be looking for some more soon. Hopefully.
Thank you, Zara. I really hope, sincerely hope that it has added value to everyone for the time they have invested for the session today.
I have learned so much. I mean, even though, we've been in the industry, but it's always good to learn from your colleagues and,
yes.
everything one doesn't know. And while sharing things, you learn from each other. So absolutely wonderful session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zara. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for being present today. We really appreciate your time.
Zara,
thank you.
Sorry?
I was just saying thank you. It was a wonderful session. I don't have any questions because Diya pretty much covered everything that I thought I needed. So it was a great session.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I said, Zara, we can take a picture. If I would request everyone, whoever can, please switch on your camera. So take a picture. Monica?
It will be on the wall of fame.
Monica, you're clicking a picture?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Diya.
Thank you, Diya. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Have a great
Bye.
evening.
Have a great weekend and good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, guys.
Shall I end the meeting?
Yeah, I think so. I was just about to say, I thought I'll just wait.
No, I waited because I wanted to talk to you. So that's why. Yeah, it was amazing, wonderful session. I think, your experience really spoke what you know, when you were talking, it was like you were just walking through your journey. So it was very nice. In fact, I learned so many things being an NLP trainer. I think kinesthetic auditory, we all have learned that and you apply that. But somewhere down the line, you forget to do that.
Yes, yes.
We all know,
Totally.
but we don't practically use it. And from now onwards, I'm starting again. I'm sure everyone, whoever was there, they will start doing it.
So when I did this session for IMPA, that was the time when I was in that stage where I was seeing that why are they not applying what I'm, why